Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Ngaio Bealum, comedian, cannabis advocate, and writer. Thank you very much for joining me today, Ngaio.
Hey, thanks for having me over, David. It's good to be here. I just woke up, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I woke up at 9:45, and my calendar's like, "You have a thing in 15 minutes." So I grabbed my coffee and pretended to put on a shirt, and here we are.
I appreciate it, and I'd be in the same boat if not for the small children in my house that won't let me sleep past 5 a.m.
I understand. My children are grown now, so they don't call me at 5 a.m. or need breakfast or anything. It's kind of nice. It's
good to see that you can get back to a point where you can sleep in again, because I feel like that part of my life is gone.
It'll happen. There's a sweet spot between like 12 and 15 where you can sleep in all you want. But then, depending if they went out, then you might have to stay up kind of worrying about them. Probably not. I'm sure you're doing a great job of raising your kids.
I look forward to that anxiety as it continues to evolve. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Well, Ngaio, I always like to start with background, right? And just, you have a rich history in the cannabis industry. What was your first introduction to it?
Oh, first of all, I'd like to say it's an honor to be a small piece of the Cannabis Mosaic. I started as a stoner, like most people. Started smoking weed in college in San Francisco, and I realized I liked it a lot, and was wondering why it was illegal. And then I read Jack Herer's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and it was really mind-opening to me, the things you could do with hemp and cannabis and the reasons why it became illegal, racism, and a lot of this stuff. So then I realized that being a cannabis activist, and this was also, it was in the 80s, so the medical cannabis movement in San Francisco was really getting big because they were finding that it was very helpful for people who'd been afflicted with HIV and AIDS. And then they found it was good for a bunch of other things. And I even remember reading my dad's old Jet magazines back in the 70s, and there were often an article or two about how they realized that cannabis could help with cancer, and it was helping with glaucoma. And the United States federal government had its own medical cannabis program for a while, where people could get like Elvi Musica and I can't remember the other guy's name right now. I had his book, but and so I was like, well, this is bullshit, and so we need to really get back into it. And so I became an activist. I mean, I was always an activist, but that became my cause.
Understandable. And based on where you were and what you saw in the 80s, can you believe where we are now from a cannabis industry standpoint, or are we further behind than you thought we might be?
I can believe where we are now, but I can't believe it's taken us this long. I tell people this all the time. People get very excited. Every year, Congress will float, the Safe Banking Act. Oh, they're going to finally allow it. Oh, they're going to reschedule. And I'm always like, let's not start smoking each other's joints just yet, because we thought that Clinton was going to legalize in 92. And then we thought Clinton was going to legalize in 96. And then we thought Obama was going to legalize in 2008, and we thought he was going to do it in 2012. So it just takes a long time. There's a lot of, what would you call it? Inertia built up in cannabis prohibition. You have to pay off all the cops because they get a lot of money for their cannabis. They arrest somebody, they get more money in their budget. They throw somebody in jail, they get money in the budget. So you have to figure out a way to deal with that. The private prisons love cannabis prisoners because they're kind of nonviolent and they don't really hurt anybody, and they're usually pretty smart. So there's just a lot of things. There's 80 years of anti-cannabis propaganda that you have to fight through just to get to a spot. And so I'm very proud. I mean, listen, I never thought Missouri would be one of the first states to legalize cannabis, Montana, for crying out loud. So there's been a lot of progress made, but I've been an activist since 91 or so. So it's not like it's been overnight. We've been at it for 30 something years. But I'm waiting to hear the results of the German legalization thing this morning. I haven't really checked on it yet.
It went through.
Still filling up. Is it yes?
Yeah, I believe it went through this morning.
Everybody come to the International Cannabis Business Conference in Berlin, Germany in April, right? Because this is the time. We're going to get into it.
So I feel like the term Renaissance man has never been more true than your body of work.
Right?
How do you do it?
Weed and coffee.
Okay, a good balance.
I mean, how do I not do it? I can't really do anything else. I just have to. These are the skills that I have, so I have to use them. I'm kind of funny. I can write a little bit. I can carry a tune. I'm comfortable on stage. The camera loves me. Those are the tools that I have. So you have to use the tools you got. So I mean, I don't always think about it. I never really set out to be like, oh, he does this and this and this and this and this. And in a lot of ways these days, that's it's more of a challenge because the algorithm wants you just to do one thing.
That's true.
So when you're trying to get your word out, the algorithm just wants you to be a furniture refinisher or a person who travels to places or somebody who does this. But if you're, a comedian and a musician and a cannabis activist, they don't really know what to do with you.
Were you a cannabis activist first, and then you realized that comedy might be a fit, or was it the other way around?
I was a comedian first. Okay. And you talk about what you know. So I have 2 albums. One is called Weed and Sex, and the other is called Weedier and Sexier. So that was just my thing. And I resisted the label of cannabis comedian for a very long time because I just wanted to be a comedian who happens to talk about weed. But, this was back in the day and there was so much prohibition and so much bias. And so you just become labeled as a thing. That guy's just a pothead. We don't need him on these shows. So I was like, F it. I'm just going to lean into the cannabis community, start working, the Seattle Hemp Fest, the Portland Hemp Fest, doing the normal shows, working with Americans for Safe Access, working with the International Cannabis Business Conferences. And then cannabis becomes legal and now everybody wants to be a cannabis comedian. It's a really funny thing.
I was going to say the same thing. Was it more enjoyable previously when you were one of a few, or now that it's more mainstream and everyone wants to be a cannabis comedian, when did you enjoy it more?
Oh, I enjoy it always.
Yeah.
Come on, man. I don't work at Walmart, which is a fine job. It's all jobs are honorable. I'm not talking shit, but I'm saying I've been broke from 15 different countries. I get to travel around and smoke weed and tell jokes. What's not to enjoy? Fame is a thing. Fame is never a guarantee. You never know. Some cats you think are going to be famous right away, and it never happens. And some cats you wonder how did that guy even become this big? That's it's a lottery. It's a crapshoot. So you just do your thing. So I'm fortunate and lucky that I've been able to make a little money, raise a couple kids, travel all around, and smoke weed. I mean, bruh, it's really nice. And so just be where you are and enjoy yourself and set some goals.
How would you describe the current state of the cannabis industry?
It's fantastic. It's overregulated in a lot of places, but I really like the fact that it's more mainstream. It's not such a big deal anymore. And even in places where cannabis isn't legal, you can sit on the patio of a bar sometimes and smoke a joint and nobody even bats an eye. No one even freaks out. Everybody's taking CBD gummies to get better sleep. Everybody has a little weed for what, some people have a little weed for the sexy time. Some people have a little weed for when they want to do things. Some people have a little weed for the aches and pains. So it's become way more accepted. It's become way more just another thing that humans like to do to relieve stress. Right? Some cats like to have a drink. Some cats like to have a joint. Some cats like to microdose mushrooms, whatever it is. Some people do yoga. Some people like to smoke a joint and do yoga. That's my thing. I always say that weed is the subculture of every other subculture, right? So for whatever it is that people want to do, there's another group of people that like to get high before they do it. right? Except for maybe brain surgery and driving school buses. But, you want to go bowling, you get high, go to the movies, whatever, write a song, do the smoky pokey, whatever you want to do.
One thing that we've seen in the industry has been increasingly higher levels of THC in products. In your opinion, are we getting to a point where it's kind of taking the fun out of getting high?
It's the challenges we have is that the government wants to regulate cannabis like cigarettes. Cannabis is not cigarettes, right? So you don't just show up and buy a package and Marlboros are Marlboros or menthols are menthols. It's more like a fine wine. So you want to smell it. The terpenes are really what you want, more than a high THC count, but people don't know. People haven't been educated. And so people just think the more THC, obviously the better the high, but not really. The more THC, the better your chances of having an anxiety attack and not really getting the things that you want. So me, all my friends, like almost everybody I know, we really try to counsel people that it's not just about high THC counts. There's nothing wrong with it. It just really means that you smoke less weed if you pay attention, because then you'll only need 2 hits. But, you're going to miss out on a lot of flavor. You're going to miss out on a lot of terpenes if you're just going by THC. But they don't really want you to do the deli style, because the old school cannabis, you go to the weed dealer's house, they pull out a few things. You get to smell it, right? Because the terpenes, how your body reacts to the terpenes, is more proof that weed loves us. Right, because different terpenes smell different ways, so different people will smell. You smell back, you're like, oh yeah, that's the one. That's cherries and pine trees. That's the one that I always like. And somebody else will smell it like, I don't really like cherries and pine trees. I like feet and skunk and burning tires.
Yeah.
And so we don't really get to do that. So now you have to trust a company, but you don't always know who's growing good stuff and different bag. You can give 5 people the same clone and get damn near 5 completely different kinds of cannabis. You would think that it would all be the same, but I mean, and it's the same cannabis plant, but the growing techniques, the things, it affects it. So, I teach people all the time. It's not about the high terpene count or the high THC count. You want to really get into the terpenes and the flavors and the effects.
Do you think we'll ever get to we'll kind of come back to that deli style sort of sale? Just because I agree with you where like the connection starts with that initial smell.
The challenge is they still do it kind of like that in Oregon, a little bit. The challenge is bureaucracies. People worry about health. Everybody's sticking their nose in the damn jar, and also they worry about diversion, right? Because now if you have a pound in a jar, who's to say how much you sold, right? So they worry about, oh yeah, half a pound went to Idaho. First of all, Idaho fucking needs the weed. But second, it's hard to regulate. They can't get the taxes and everything. So I hope that it goes back to that style. I really hope that we really push it toward a fancy wine industry model where you go to the wine shop and you can have some tastings and then you can pick out the one that you want to take home for later. You know what I mean? Or more social clubs. I think when the cannabis clubs first started in California in the early 90s, they were social clubs. They were peer resource centers. It wasn't just you go in and you buy your cannabis and you leave. You go in, you buy your cannabis, you sit around, you can bump into some homies. There's bingo night, there's movie night, there's peer-to-peer counseling, there's a massage program. They had all kind of different things, right? It was a social club and a community center. Which I think is important. I think we have to remember that cannabis, you don't sit in a room by yourself and smoke weed. I mean, sometimes you do. You have to get up in the morning or whatever. But the same way a bar is a legal drug community. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
What would you call it? A safe access space or something like that. We need more cannabis clubs like that and not just buy your weed and go home.
No, I completely agree where I know that we don't like the comparisons to the liquor industry, but there is definitely a spot for like more of your traditional just retail outlet that's static versus like a social club where it is a truly social experience.
You need more of that. You need more of that. And so I hope that's the way that the things go. And it seems to be going that way. Like San Francisco has a few. I live in Sacramento. They're opening another lounge. There's a quasi underground lounge. It's really nice. It's here right now. Las Vegas just opened a couple. Nubu's been there for a while. And they're opening another one closer to the Strip. So I think this is the right way to go. And Colorado's going that way too. And this is the right way to go. You should be able to pop down to the local for a joint and a game of chess. Or whatever you like, or meet your homie somewhere, or where the tourists can go, because you're not supposed to smoke weed outside, which is funny.
Right. Well,
So the tourists need a place to go. You can't sit in your hotel room and fire up a fat doobie. They'll kick you out. So you got to have, if you want it to be a tourist draw, which it is. People come to Nevada. People come to California. People go to Northern California to try to weed all the time. So you have to take care of them.
well, and I found it encouraging. I mean, it hasn't been like a full-blown like buy into these lounges, but the takeovers that they've had, the like pop-up lounges, I feel like that's been a good bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't argue. Where do you live, by the way?
I actually live in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, F.M. Bucky. I've been to Madison, Wisconsin. I was there in 1985 for the International Drum Corps International World Championships.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was 18 years old and drunk on 25-cent beer night.
Yep. Well, and now the beers downtown are 50 cents. So it's
Well, listen, the beers in Sacramento are like $8 for the cheap one, so you guys are doing great.
well, honestly, I think that's one of the biggest obstacles that we have in Wisconsin is that it is a state with a very strong alcohol culture and a very strong alcohol lobbying voice that has kind of
Sure.
kept Wisconsin to be one of the largest, or kind of a prohibition island amongst a bunch of other states that have opened up.
Yeah, because Michigan's legal now.
Yep, Michigan, Illinois, Minneapolis, or Minnesota just opened up.
Wow, yeah, so you guys are kind of in you're a Great Lake unto yourself.
We are, and it's
Prohibition.
It is. Well, and it's crazy because, we did a story on when they opened up Illinois, right? Like in the first few weeks, the 8 dispensaries on the border did like $30 million just from people with Wisconsin IDs.
Oh yeah, it's no problem. It's not, there's a dispensary on the border of Oregon and Idaho that does pretty well. Okay, and conversely, the Idaho Highway Patrol also does pretty well on that stretch of the border between Oregon and Idaho. So you have to be careful.
Well, and it is. That's one of the other sides of like feeling comfortable smoking it outside. Most places is that being in Madison is a very it's decriminalized, it's accepted everywhere. But you kind of like dip outside of Dane County, and that's when you got to start being careful. And it's just crazy to me that we still operate in an environment like that. Like they recently proposed this idea to very minimally legalize medical cannabis. And it was going to be under 5 strategically placed government-run facilities. And I was just like, wow, I can't think of a worse possible idea.
Yeah, that was the thing that all the federal patients said about the government, the federally government-grown medical cannabis was. The first thing they would say is like, it's freaking terrible. It's not very good weed.
Yeah.
They don't really grow the strains I like, but it's free and it's legal, so F it. Yeah, man. I see it coming. I really hope it starts moving a little faster, which it definitely has. I mean, for a minute it was just Colorado, and then it was Colorado, Washington, and California, right? But now it's Colorado, Washington, California, Montana, kind of Florida, a little bit of Philadelphia, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, all of Canada. Right,
Yeah.
and pretty much all of Germany now. So in Thailand, you think Thailand? Anybody think Thailand, where they used to flog you for throwing gum on the street? You didn't think Thailand was going to be one of the first Asian countries to decriminalize or legalize? So I mean, we're making a lot of progress. I just hope that the day comes when I can buy Moroccan hash from my California cannabis dispensary the same way I can buy French and Australian wines at the Bevmo. That would be awesome.
So I mean, I guess my next question for you was, in your opinion, what is going to be the next big thing in cannabis? Try a lot of products out in the industry. You see a lot of things and, kind of what's coming in. What do you foresee as the next big thing?
That is a really good question. I'm not really sure. I mean, we have so many things now. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of different strains. You can get all kinds of different concentrates, from rosin to resin to old school hash to pills to any sort of food. I really think the next big push kind of has to be increased access nationally, right? You should be able to smoke weed in Georgia. You should be able to smoke weed in Texas. You should damn near need to smoke weed in parts of Texas. And more international cooperation. I mean, Canada already imports a lot of cannabis to Germany. Israel imports a lot of cannabis to Germany because Germany has a robust medical cannabis program, but they don't really grow their own cannabis. So I would like to see more international cooperation. But I can't really tell you what's on the horizon. But I can tell you that if you come to the International Cannabis Business Conference, we're doing one in Barcelona in March, just in front of the Cannabis Festival, and we're doing one in Berlin in April, right in the heart of where cannabis has just been legalized, apparently, according to you. You can learn all about that. You can meet all these people. You can get involved into the thing, and that's the way to go.
So you're the master of ceremonies. What are your plans for the show?
I'm going to smoke some weed. And I'm going to introduce people, and I'm going to wander around, and I'm going to network, and I'm going to run the questions and answers. And I'm really I'll probably bring a notebook this time, and I'm going to soak it up, and I'm going to really learn what's going on in Germany and how people can get in front of it. I mean, this is a very exciting and opportune time for people interested in international cannabis business. The rollout is going to be very slow, and they're going to really try to keep it German before they expand into other things, because you got to fight the EU on this. You have to have what do they call it, the best practices or whatever. There's a lot of jargon. People say things like EU GMP and blah 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 blah.
Good manufacturing practices.
Good manufacturing practices. So
yeah.
You have to I don't know who came up with that acronym, but it works out.
It was a manufacturer that wanted to sell really expensive equipment, but
when you know the history,
there's a difference there.
Yeah. I'm here with the mediocre manufacturing practices. We're the MMP. Not to be confused with the BMP. Those guys suck. They're just bad.
Most importantly, after the business conferences, will there be a recap rap? Like
a rap song?
Yeah.
Like, I'm Ngaio Bealum. I'm here to say weed is now legal in the USA. I'm very old school with my approach. I can't really. Coming in hot.
I was looking at the coverage last year, and there was like whoever.
Alex did the rap.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be a recap rap from our founder and producer, Alex Rogers. Yes, there will. I'm actually going to try to get a hot 16 on there. I'm going to let him know that I need to get a hot 8 bars. I used to be in a rap group. I still got some skills. I smash these kids every once in a while. Just let them know. Show up at the cypher. What's up, OG? What's up? I get litty. Do the gritty getting litty.
What?
Sheesh.
In your opinion,
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to generation whatever they are. Not Gen Z. Who's the next ones?
Zoomers.
No,
I don't know.
No, Zoomers is Gen Z. There's one after Gen Z.
Oh, okay. Millennials. Oh, you mean a little older than Gen Z? Yeah, it's millennials.
No, younger than. Wait,
younger. How
how old are the Gen Zers right now? My kids are Gen Zers. They're 24 and 22, so I think they're Gen Z.
Yeah. I think, early 20s is Gen Z.
Yeah, so I'm talking to them. Sheesh! Liddy.
Where, in your opinion, what are the biggest hurdles to federal legalization in the United States? And
the cops.
Yeah.
The DEA. What was it? Was it Mencken? Was it Voltaire? Never expect a man to understand you if his job depends on him understanding you. The moment you legalize cannabis, also, alcohol and big pharma too. These are not conspiracies, right? Like you said, you got to fight the alcohol lobby tooth and nail in Wisconsin because it's been proven in states with legalized weed, alcohol consumption goes down. It doesn't go down by a lot. Oh my God! Instead of making millions and millions of dollars, you're making millions and millions of dollars. Heaven forfend, right? They can coexist. So you gotta argue with those cats. You gotta argue with big pharma, right? Who also sees people start self-medicating when they find a strain that works for them, and maybe they don't buy as much ibuprofen. Maybe they don't need as many opiates and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. You got to fight with the people who throw people in jail for money. The private prison industry hates it when you make things uncriminal. They would like for more crimes. They would like for more things to be crime. They would like for being homeless to be a crime, so they can throw you in jail and get paid for it. And this is not an extreme position. This is not a conspiracy. This is all very true. I know it sounds weird and people don't always think of it like that, but there are multi-million-dollar things that you have to fight with. And also the will of the people, right? There's no matter how you fancy it up, and people are always like, oh, we're gonna defeat the stoner paradigm. We're not just stoners, we're just cannabis users. It's not gonna make people like you anymore. There are always gonna be people who hate cannabis, no matter what you do. You can wear a suit, your freaking dispensary can look like an Apple store, which is often kind of weird to me because it feels very sterile. I always think of cannabis as a social, we're gonna get into it sort of thing. They don't care. They just hate weed, right? It's 80 years of propaganda that you gotta fight. So they're, quit trying to suck up to those dudes. They're not really going to come around. You just have to stay out of their way. You stay out of our way, we stay out of your way. Everybody can have a good time. Everybody mind your business.
Well, as the industry is minding its own business, are there any spots where you think the industry, either from an advocacy or an operational perspective, is falling down?
Oh, don't get me started on the overtaxing. Don't get me started on, I actually have to finish. I'm writing an article for High Times about this right now. You have to remember, and I am the host of the International Cannabis Business Conference, and I generally try to follow the do well by doing good rule. I understand that capitalism wants to capitalize, but I also understand from long conversations with the cannabis plant. We've been friends for a long time. I talked to her just last night. I'm going to talk to her again later today. We talk constantly. The cannabis plant hates monopolies. The cannabis plant has been one of the most successful decentralized business schemes in the history of the world, right? So when you show up with your little Uber plan, like you're going to spend $1 billion and take over the whole state, and lose money for 5 years and then raise the prices on everybody, that's just not going to work. It doesn't work. You can ask MedMen how well that worked. You can ask Tilray how well that worked. And I'm not being an ass. I'm not wishing anybody bad luck in their business ventures, but I'm saying look at your business model, bro. There is space for everybody. You don't have to come in here and be, what do they say? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
That's right.
Right? So you don't have to come in here and be a completely voracious capitalist pig dog. You can come in and find your spot and make good money and make good product, right? So don't show up with no hippies on your team. Don't show up with more money than sense. Don't show up thinking that you're just going to come over and take everything over. Weed hates that. Weed. Cannabis will actively fight against you. You understand? Mm-hmm. Right? So that's my thing. But there's also space for everybody. And I also remember that you don't just have to grow weed, or you don't just have to sell weed to be successful in the cannabis industry. You could be the best cannabis accountant in the world. You could be the person who builds the greenhouses or does the HVAC, or the person who, there's all kind of marketing things. There's so much space for whatever your skills are. You can be the guy who travels around and talks about weed and writes about it for different magazines and hangs out in Barcelona at the International Cannabis Business Conference. They told me to mention that. And it's going to be in Barcelona, and it's going to be in Arizona. It's so weird. I'm going from Barcelona to Arizona to Berlin because it's just that time of year. And then I'll be at the Emerald Cup in May. I'm hosting that as well.
I was curious, do you have any upcoming plans for the International Cannabis Business Conference?
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. I meant to bring it up. We are Europe's largest cannabis B2B, which is business to business, first of all. This is our 5th or 6th year in Barcelona and our 7th or 8th year. I get confused because 2020 ruined a lot of things. Our 7th or 8th year in Berlin. So we're the largest one in Europe. Barcelona is one of my favorite cities in the world. So come out to that. And Barcelona's got a great, if you're studying like cannabis models, right? It's all social clubs. So weed is technically illegal in Spain, but according to the vagaries of their constitution, you have bodily autonomy, and so if you want to smoke weed, it's up to you. So you join a social club. There's social clubs all over in different neighborhoods of town, like a local bar, and it's kind of like how the Mormons used to do alcohol before they got the Winter Olympics that one year. So you have to join the club. So it's like $20, €30 for a year to join this social club. And then you can go in and you can smoke weed and you can buy weed, and they got a variety of different things, and there's DJs and they all have different styles, right? Some are like co-working facilities, some are like little sports pubs, or some are like little bro bars where they're all in there playing FIFA and watching El Clasico and shit, and some are like nightclubs, some are very high tech. It's great. It's a great model. And I hope that when and if cannabis is legalized in Spain, they still keep that model. And then Berlin is just big. We're just a big, giant conference. We're not quite as big as the MJ BizCon, but it's all the hitters from all over the world. I like to walk around and count languages. I think I counted like 15 different languages last time I was there.
Is that is the vibe a little bit different? Is because it's more of an international conference than MJ Biz? Is MJ Biz more of a like US focused show in your opinion?
MJ Biz is generally, yes, a U.S. focused show, but the United States is gigantic, and the MJ BizCon is also gigantic. It's almost too big sometimes, because you've been out there for 2 days, and you were going to meet your homie, and they're way over on the other side. You're over on this side. There's 80,000 people, 100,000 people over the course. I don't even know how many. They get a lot of people in there over the course of those 3 days. And so it's just a lot to do. We're not quite that big. I think we're 7, 8, 9, 10,000 people these days. But we have a big hotel for it, and it all works out, and everybody gets to hang out. And we do a lot of good networking and chopping it up. And that's the important thing.
Well, that's having gone to trade shows and other industry events outside of the cannabis industry. I will say that cannabis industry events, when you talk about a networking event, it truly is a networking event where people are there to do that first, and then I don't want to say business second, because those kind of go hand in hand, but it is truly in every sense a networking event.
Cannabis is a social drug. You stand in a circle when you smoke it, right? That denotes equality and peerage, right? Like the Knights of the Round Table. No one is superior because you're in a circle, so you're all kind of equidistant. And also, stoners get shit done. That's one of the things. Like, that's such a negative stereotype. And people are like, oh, stoners, blah, blah. We're trying to get away from the stoner stereotype, from the stoner, blah, blah mindset. I'm like, the stoners are the ones who got this shit legal. The stoners are the ones who put their freedom and went to jail on the line. The stoners are the ones who argued with the authorities. The stoners are the ones who got all these things passed, right? Where was your bougie corporate ass when we were all going to jail? Don't come in here and start talking smack. You know what I mean? Right? Oh, yeah. So, I get a little sad sometimes. But I try not to get in arguments in my capacity as the MC of the International Cannabis Business Conference Series. But sometimes people will say something. We have to remember that the plant is magical. And I know that's very hippie and woo-woo. But it is a magical plant. If we pay attention to the hemp plant, we can grow better paper. We're forgetting these things again. We can grow a lot of different things and be better toward the planet, and be better toward the environment, and be better toward each other. And we have to remember that. I try to remind these cats all the time that the cannabis legalization started as a social justice movement. It didn't start as a way for you just to show up and be a greedy capitalist and market share. It showed up to keep people out of jail. It showed up to help people get better when they were deathly and gravely ill.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It showed up to help a community. This is what the cannabis movement is supposed to be. And I love the fact that cats can make money, because I get to travel around and work festivals and shows and business conferences and write for all these magazines. So it's great. Let's all make some money. Let's all make a lot of money. But let's not lose sight of what it's supposed to be about. And I'm now off my soapbox.
No, is the industry, from a social equity, social justice perspective, succeeding in the way that it had planned?
Hell no, bro. No, it's not. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do because you want to, hey, the people who've been most affected by it should be the people who get the first crack at it. But then the people with money show up and they start spreading money around. They're like, hey, listen, here's some money. Maybe we should get the first crack at it, right? California, everything was supposed to be small for the first 5 years. So the smaller operators and the social equity cats could get in and get a toehold, right? Just try to set it up. That didn't happen because the people with money showed up and spread millions of dollars around to the cats who are making the rules. And all of a sudden, the cats who have millions of dollars have an advantage. The social equity clubs were all 2 years behind everybody, right? And so now they're trying to catch up. Other states are trying to do it better. But it's tough. Money changes everything. It's hard to argue with people when they're waving millions of dollars at you. But of course, a lot of those cats came in and showed up and spent millions of dollars and built fancy clubs that look like Apple stores, and they're all out of money now. Right? And I try to tell these cats all the time, you can't do it. It's not Uber. It's not Lyft. You can't do it that way. You have to come in a different way. And people don't listen, and then they run out of money.
Shifting gears a little bit. Podcast producer Eric and his partner Amanda, big fans of Cooking on High. How did that come together?
I was at home and they called me up and they said, hey man, we hear you're the guy to talk to. We're looking for somebody who knows a lot about cannabis and is comfortable on camera. And I was like, yeah, I probably know a guy. And so we shot it, and it sat in a can. It was supposed to be a web series. They told me it was going to be a web series. It was going to be for stage13.com or some shit like that. And I was like, yeah, man, great. Sure, I'll show up. I'll do the thing. They offered me a little money. And we shot it, and it sat around for a year. They never called me back. I was like, hey, when's it coming out? I want to start doing promo or whatever. And it sat around for like a year and a half. And I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just not ever coming out. And then one day they called me up, and they're like, be ready. We're going to be on Netflix in 2 weeks. I was like, oh, shit, all right. That'll be cool. And then it showed up, and man, I went from like 4,000 Instagram followers to 50,000 Instagram followers, like hella quick. People recognize me in Zurich, of all places. I'm just walking down the street, they're like, oh, Ngaio. Yeah, hey, what's up? So that was great. I really wish we had gotten a second season, because I really think we could have improved the show a lot and made it a lot better. But we were the first cannabis cooking show, like first cannabis cooking competition show on the streaming and on the air. And then Discovery Plus tried to do one. They did like Chopped 420 edition, and then Khalees and them came out with a Cooking with Cannabis competition, which was pretty good too. But I really think we could have knocked it out the park and they'd given us a second season. TV doesn't really rock it like that really anymore. You don't really get a season to find your footing, and then another chance to get into it. So, but there will be other opportunities, and we'll see what's going on. If anybody's putting together a show, hit me up. If you want to help me produce my cannabis-friendly travel podcast, get at me.
Well, certainly, hashtag would watch that. Outside of entertainment, is there a realistic opportunity for Cooking with Cannabis?
Like for,
like as a restaurateur, as another,
there was a restaurant in LA for a long time.
Yeah.
right? The Lowell's Farm people had a dispensary that had a cannabis-infused restaurant. Downtown LA, there's a chef who throws cannabis-infused dinners all the time. I threw a cannabis-infused dinner at my house last year. Chef Chef Unica in Seattle was throwing a bunch of them. They kind of shut her down because she was getting big. But I think she still throws some secret ones up there. We just did the Cannabis Chef. I work with the Cannabis Chef competition too. So we do Portland and Phoenix and Seattle cooking and cannabis competitions out there. There's, that's the beauty of cannabis, man. It can stay underground and you can be happy and profitable and you don't need a million people to know about you. It's like there's a comedian named Rex Navarrete, and you've probably never heard of him, but he's huge in the Filipino community and he sells out theaters all the time. And, if you're not Filipino, you have no idea. So there are a bunch of things. If you're not a stoner local to wherever this community is, if you're not a Denver stoner, or if you're not a Los Angeles stoner, you may have never heard about this hella cool hundreds of people or even, 89 people, but they all paid good money to get into this fancy dinner. And it works like that. And so that's what I think. We have to remember, that everything doesn't have to be millions of people. Everything doesn't have to be thousands of people for it to be fun and for it to be profitable. And not just profitable, but very profitable, right? You don't have to ask everybody for $1. You can ask 1,000 people for $10.
Do you have, if you had to serve one infused meal, what does it include?
Me personally, for me cooking, it's tough because I would be torn between my fried chicken, maybe with an infused honey butter, or I can braise a short rib. Dude, I love a braised meat. I will braise a short rib with a rich, almost a Southern style sage and oregano gravy, and we would serve that over some mashed potatoes with something crispy on the side, or just fried chicken.
Yeah,
which sounds weird to say, but I can cook. I cook a lot of different things.
No, that was it was a mistake for me to not eat lunch before this.
Or really, just some Eggos. People often ask me like, "Hey man, I need a simple cannabis recipe." I'm like, "All right, make some toast, put some cannabis butter on it, add a little honey." That's about as easy as it gets.
No, I've certainly been at that wedding where there's like 2 dishes of butter going around, and you need to really make sure you know what dish you're holding.
Back when I was married, when we got married, we definitely had it was in the 90s, so cannabis wasn't super legal, but we had a person walking around handing lemon bars to the right people at the wedding party. Like, you can have this lemon bar. See how it goes for you. Take a walk in the garden.
Of all your irons in the fire, what is your favorite passion?
I like being funny. I like traveling around, but I also like weed activism. I like them kind of equally. I mean, I don't know, man. If I could pick a greatest passion, I could probably narrow this shit down. And they say if you chase 2 birds, you catch none, right? But they also say, jack of all trades, master of none, oftentimes better than a master of one. So there's a yin and a yang. I would like to be not a better writer, because I'm a pretty good writer. I like to be a more consistent writer. I have to just really sit down. Comedy's fun because you get to travel around and you stand in the air and you wave your arms and shit. And people see writing, you kind of sit there by yourself. And maybe I should just write in front of people. Everybody come over and watch me write. We'll put it on a big screen. And I'll be like, oh, no, that's not it. That's actually not a bad idea.
No.
Come watch me workshop this article.
Right? Is that the evolution of podcasting? Is that the next is sitting down quietly watching somebody write?
Yeah.
The ideation phase. Just like, oh, he just had his aha moment. Did you see it?
Yeah. He's coming out strong. He hasn't had any typos yet, and he's only erased 1 sentence. He hasn't killed a whole paragraph or broken out into tears 1 time. So,
or just like that moment with like the select all delete, and then the entire crowd just, oh.
Or you write a particularly good line, you know, like, and that's the way it went. Oh, one guy breaks into tears. Oh my God, that was beautiful.
Right. He's speaking to me.
His metaphor.
You know, just a couple more things. I really do appreciate you.
Hey man, my pleasure. The time goes by very quickly.
It does. One thing I wanted to know about you're very active on social media.
Yes.
And it seems like the cannabis industry is really fueled by social media. You know, could you just speak to the, or I feel like, or is it fueled by it, or is it a necessary evil?
The challenge, of course, is the algorithm is so weird, right? Because on Instagram, I can post a really stupid, ridiculous weed meme, right? You know, some bullshit like, it'll be like, yeah, I'm running late, traffic's bad. And then this is the traffic, right? And that'll get, the algorithm will show that to everybody. But if I post a picture of cannabis and I'm like, this is Blue Dream, it is a hybrid, it's a cross of this and this and this, you can find it here and here and here, they're like, hey, you're going against our community standards. Right? So you can't educate people, but you can do goofy stoner shit, right?
Yeah.
So this is the challenge that we have with the algorithms. And I mean, there are some specific specific platforms or social medias like Buddhist or Canamar and some other things, but you know, that's narrowcasting. Preaching to the choir is cool because I like to sing in the choir, but you also want to do some outreach, and it's harder and harder. If you have a smaller cannabis business or web page with not too many followers, you can do almost anything you want. They don't really look at you. But once you get a little bigger, they start to fuck with you unless you want to give them money, because High Times advertises there all the time, and other weed people with money advertise their weed shit all over. And I'm always confused, like, what's the rule? How come I can't mention my cannabis celebration? You guys get upset at me, but these guys are, you know, they're showing up as ads in my feed with their cannabis celebration. This is the same pictures.
I've had very similar experiences where, you know, we're posting news, we're posting podcasts, industry insight, and Rewind up in social media jail, and I just don't understand it either.
Man, listen, if I knew the secret, I wouldn't tell you. No, I would, because shared knowledge is shared power.
Well,
but I mean, I love social media, and I like Twitter, and I think I'm gonna start exploring Snapchat more, because they seem to be a little more freewheeling in what you can post on there. And it's weird too, because Facebook and Instagram are owned by the same people, but you can post things on Facebook and not have the problems that you get if you post it on Instagram. And I don't know why that is.
I had seen an old bit that you had done on parenting on cannabis.
Yes.
And you know, as a parent with two young kids, 5 and 3, I was just curious if you had, you know, any additional nuggets of insight in terms of parenting on cannabis and, you know, bringing your family in as part, you know, as it being part of your like family culture.
Yeah, I had no choice, right? Because dad is a cannabis cat, right? And dad is an engineer who smokes a little weed on the side. Dad's a weed smoker who gets paid to talk about it. So it's always been like, there's just some things that adults do that kids can't do, right? Driving, drinking, watching R-rated films, watching PG-13 films, watching PG films, for crying out loud. As you get older, you get to do these things, right? You know, my kids know what weed smells like since they were little, but I was always on the no drugs till college for the longest time, and they didn't do drugs till college, as far as I could tell. I was like, you know, if you're senior year in high school, you got your colleges and shit lined up, yeah, sure, maybe do it, you know, you smoke a little weed or whatever. I think my daughter accidentally ate the wrong brownie one time when she was in high school, when she was like 18. It wasn't my fault. It was her mom left the brownie. It wasn't my fault. So, you know, she had a small adventure, but nobody got hurt. And then, you know, she ended up living in Amsterdam for a year and change. Not because of the brownie, but because, you study abroad.
Yeah. No, otherwise it'd be one influential brownie.
Man, listen, people have done that. People have smoked a joint and changed their life. They're like, you know what, I'm moving to California. So yeah, man, just be honest with your kids. I think is the biggest thing, right? You don't want them thinking, hey, lay off. Did you hear that?
No.
Yeah. No. Oh, okay. My roommate's got a dog. She's walking around squeaking the dog toy right now. So I can hear it. No, you didn't hear it. I shouldn't even have brought it up. Never mind. Yeah, man, just have fun. Be yourself. Raise your kids. What do they say? The days are long and the years are short. So it's going to go by way faster than you think. Just be honest with them. I think the best thing we can do about kids and drugs is to be honest and let them know what they can expect and let them know to be careful and let them know to don't just be buying drugs off the street. Buy drugs from somebody you know and trust. If you have to, you don't necessarily have to do drugs, but if you feel like you want to try one, be safe and smart about it and know what to expect and look it up, right? That was the thing. Like when I was in 4th grade in relatively liberal and progressive California, we didn't have DARE, but they sat us down and were like, this is acid. This is what it does. This is LSD. This is what it looks like. This is what it does. This is weed. This is what it looks like. This is what it smells like. This is how you might feel about it. This is heroin. It's highly addictive, but people really love it. Be careful, right? Don't do drugs, but knowledge is power. It's always better to know than to not know, right? Prohibition never works. Education works wonders, right?
Completely agree.
So that's the deal. So keep cats informed and then let them know, man. And hope for the best. You can't always stop people, right? Some people will I got friends, they're freaking psychonauts. Some new drug comes out, they want to be the first ones to try it. I'm always like, yeah, man, go ahead. I'll expect a full report. We'll see how it goes. There's also drugs I've never done because it's never just appealed to me. I've never done acid. I don't do coke. I like weed, a few mushrooms, a couple times a year, maybe some mescaline if I can get it, and that's about it.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time and, offering your insight. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to add or anything in particular you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself?
I would like to say that if you're interested in cannabis equipment, come to the International Cannabis Business Conference because we have all sorts of extractor machines. We have points of sales things. We have all the gear, especially in Berlin. We have a big showroom full of gear. Also, I have an extractor machine plug. So if you need a guy, call me up or find me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or ngaio420@yahoo.com. Send me an email. I will hook you up with my cat. You'll get a good deal. Everybody will be happy.
Well, thank you again, Ngaio. I really do appreciate it, and I hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
My pleasure, and I can't wait, man. I'll be on every 3 weeks. How about that? We'll give you an update from Barcelona.
Oh, I would definitely love that, just to know how things are going over there.
We'll talk about it.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Ngaio Bealum, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.